Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scary Scouts and Pirates of the Caribbean film series. Captain Simon Angels here from Simon Perryman. Today's day is Sunday, Monday. Today's day is Sunday, March 26, 2023. We're just gonna do that for about make it a part one for about for Celebration Lutheran Church for 10:15. We're just I gonna join a sense of my friends and relatives and neighbors and my families doing my congregations of to every Sunday. So usually they have about some church anytime. So I just went to for the last morning to go for the last some of these about last 5 hours ago. We're just hanging out for about the pastor quiz. I basically it's just about we told about this about my quotation hobbies. The number one so quotation hobbies number one. So we do talked about this for about since 10 years since from 2013 since my friends and my families and my brother's friends and my sister's friends and my mom and dad's friends and his cousins and my cousin too even out about which is followed from 10 years ago, which is do that for about 20 years since my friends and the family for about 2003. So I was a little kid for the last 10 years ago from 2013 for a long time. Since so my dad, since my dad, Frankie, Bella, and my mom were just following the drive around to about for Catholic Church to the Lakewood, Tacoma, Seattle, Leavenwood, temporarily, and included these ones about McCord Air Base on the church every Sunday, and the Easter Sunday for about even the Oregon since my aunts went to the same as the Catholic Church. Some Californias can do some like that about Korea. Some of these are about Hawaii and Korea. Then so I certainly basically do have Washington D.C. has a church on it that do have about 2 or 3 day vacation for the Washington D.C.s. So we fly to the C-17 for about Andrews and the McDover Air Base, all from the United States military that do have C-17. It's about 72 hours, 3 day roll calls. I usually about was scheduled for about every 3 days and 72 hours roll calls. Um, so I basically do have about for order the explanations for about for baggage passengers baggage claim for about was free. They also do have call for reservators for about the 3 day roll calls for 72 hours with the 3 day roll calls. So I usually just about visited for about the McCord Passengers Terminal for about some of these like that. The 8 years for the last appears for about. I usually they have some free. Always call for about some in the McCord Military Air Base. I usually like 17. I usually did have about earplugs on. When I was sitting there, hang out there for about C-17 since my dad, my sister, Bella, even Frankie left behind for about summer 2015. He was working on the former associated from the Target. Some of these are like that for about. I was in about flying around for the Las Vegas, just like others about C-17. So I usually for about I we just spent a night for about 24 hours for 1 day, just a day one. Since I just wanted to talk about we're just having about the explanation part, just being about the part of words for about the mistreatment and the misgentleman here. So we don't want any mistreatment here. Don't want to get over threatened to each other. So that's where yes, we're gonna do that for about all the time. So since my mom and dad and Bella were just drove around for about 4 hours and 30 minutes ago, head to the Disneyland and the Los Angeles and Anaheim for about 1 or 2 weeks, 1 week or 2 weeks. I usually basically it's just about flight back to the home and flight back to the SeaTac International Airport. Just case it about costs over about $400, $800, and $1,000. That could be expensive. So I usually the hotels that do have about reservated for booking for about the online or phones, or we can use it about computers. And sometimes I just miss like a computers for the online today for my laptops and the right over there for my private desk and the tables. Sometimes I do that for okay with that. So I definitely for about not to waste of that time and not to waste of the showdowns and so I don't want it to waste of that time. So that's when we are gonna have to declare this up. So since my mom's cousin, so I usually about my mom's uncles, maybe in my grand uncles. They use it about he lives in California. So my Korean aunt just lives about the Korea town, and she lives in Los Angeles. It's my mom and Bella and I were just having about, but they're very good friends, a very hard time family. So sisters, there's my sisters, my mom and dad, and we're just gonna do that for about quotation about the whole entire family of an evolution in 2015. And I used to have about 3 week vacation, my mom's 3 week vacations while she was hanging out with us. I just wanted to ask it about one of my questions or about we're just not gonna have to blow this off. No crash allowed here. So yeah. And that's a pretty good plans for my these questions. So Colossal Hobbies number 2. What was this? What am I thinking of about? What's it called? Frankie's birthday is Outback Steakhouse and No Rules, Just Rights. Just about Frankie's birthday for about 8 years ago, for about from 2015. So I just ate for about the special occupations. So we're just doing to have the 4. We've been reservated for about 2015 for the last 8 years ago. Since Frankie and I would just have it about for a great time since my partner. I just told him for about my dad and Bella and Frankie. I would just have her about the whole conversation about family meetings for about Discovers to planning to about for his birthday, Bella's birthday for the Olive Garden. So Frankie's birthday was out by Steakhouse. Just about No Rules, Just Rights. Just about television commercials. And that do have the appetizers and food and the drinks that do have the entries of the served meals. I do have it in Miss Breaks class. I do have it about quotation about director of Miss St. Canella's class for about Elmer Ridge for the last 9 years ago. So Frankie just told me about Discover's evolution for about 2015. We're thinking about entire family and the just 4 guys and about we're just hanging out for the Outback Steakhouse. We're doing this right. Nothing just wrong. So we're doing just about pretty fun. Having the birthday cakes. Yeah. do much fun for Frankie's birthday cake. He was 22. So so Bella's birthday was on Olive Garden from October 2015. I usually hang out there. The weather was cold outside for the night. I usually came inside, so we're just hanging out for about 45 minutes longer. Whoa, that could be overcrowded. I usually for the last 45 minutes, since Bella, Frankie, I would just have about hang outside for 45 minutes. It's too cold out there. I usually say we go inside, so just hang out here and inside, just staying warm, and then I can only about my family reservated to for the Olive Garden. They do have about some drinks and appetizers, and tour Italy. They do have lasagna and crispy chicken, the Parmesan sauce, and spaghettis, and those just taste pretty good. So I usually about take a box in the home. So since my Bella's birthday was the food cake, so I don't want her to eat them all. So I just gonna have to save Bella's food cake. So this is my sister, and I just haven't told my friends, my congregations who are about Bella's fruitcake savings. So she was 19. She also to do whatever she can. So she'll hang out to her house. She's hanging out with Chloe's and Brandon's and Courtney sometimes. Basically, I usually about Yoshi's alive for now, for he is 15. He's tributed to Yoshi. If Jack and Dory was definitely, he was 1 year old. I was told about Discover's tour about entire opportunistic. Hold on a second. Sorry. Well, I was told for about entire opportunistics at all times. So we just doing about her quotations, very much of it, as much as better as soon as possible. I was my family interesting for about my birthday institutions. So Olive Garden are doing okay with that, and Outback Steakhouse from 2015, my Frankie's birthday and Bella's birthday aren't doing okay. So I usually alright for that. I was eating food and eating appetizers with dinner times, and I usually people would just say don't get myself sucks, and don't get myself citizide jeopardization. So I usually don't want to get jeopardized sometimes, and I usually don't want to get to it cost me to do. So I usually I ate for some food like that. So for thanks at any time. So for the next month. So my next month is Thanksgiving 2015 for turkeys and mashed potatoes, corns and homemade stuffing with dressing and casseroles and family issues about Thanksgivings. I just read the book of Percy Jackson, The Titan's Curse, and I just read it about Rick Riordan, and even the Percy Jackson Sea of Monsters is the second one's about first to second movie, and even the Titan's Curse is delayed today, so even that is no longer to be on the third movie, fourth, the fifth, and sixth movie, including 7. Well, I used to that case. I usually gonna have to eat dinner for the Thanksgiving day. All the foods, all the cake, all the cheesecakes. Man, does it taste delicious? So not for we don't want to get jealous. So people doesn't like jealous. People loves delicious food, kind of like food. So I usually for about Thanksgiving Day for my friends and congregation and my family, I usually about text for the Facebooks anytime as soon as possible. Yeah, I sometimes it's just like it. So it's usually about anytime as soon as my food is just preparation for ready. Yeah, I usually about I usually about eat first and leftovers for Thanksgiving Day for eat turkeys and ready for workout for jogs. That's what I can't be do. So we are in quotation and hobbies number 3. So Christmas days is Christmas breaks. I just went to about working for the job sites on Puyallup School District for the 2 years. Since I wasn't in an advanced program due to about the senior years of the graduated day for only just those guys about 21 years old. So I was about for the evolutions of the Mrs. Graves, Mr. Haynes, just like Miss Trisha, Mr. Jeffers, and Miss D. I just call him Mrs. Cowdell, and Mrs. Starr. I just call her Miss Paula. Wherever you guys can, and John, I just call him Mr. Anderson, and Lanny, and the community jobs, and I just call him Mr. Gleason, and Mr. Bentley, I just call him Miss Elaine, and Miss Joanne, I call him Mrs. Rogers, and Miss Donna, whoever her last name is. So even all my friends, I just looking for my Facebook. So we're just filming it for 3 minutes and 15 seconds ago, and we're just hanging out for about. I was about there. We went to about my new family, my new congregation, my new relatives, and my new friendships I do have about working to each other for the next doors is 5 hours. So we worked for the volunteers for about 4 hours, and I was working at Washington Tractor Parts at Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Nick, and including for work crew with Brandon and I will have a great friends. We work in the Calendula farm, and I usually for about 4 hours. Excuse me. So I basically would just returning back to wash my hands and take my boots off and just wash it off for just as long as I can. Um, I usually that you don't. It's exactly the same. I usually sense my friends and my relatives to just have it the great grades, the be good listeners of Mr. Jeffers and Mr. Anderson, and then Nick and
Mikey, did you take a shower?
I usually that can. I do exactly same. I usually about for the last 10 minutes ago, so I usually took it out for I was figure out. What I just says, I just believe in what I could. I just came to understand. I just say any time for anything for I usually do have about be offered about Christmas days for Mrs. Grace and Mr. I just told the guys I just want to be offered about Wednesdays or Fridays. Even Nick, I just told Nick about I'll be off about Friday before the Christmas break days for my vacations. Just like a Christmas break for vacations anytime since Frankie, my dad, and I would just have it see it about in the heart of the sea, Moby Dick, giant sperm whales. Yeah, I usually about white sperm whales. I do have about 17th centuries to 1800s. I do have seen about the whales in it, even though the normal ones about sperm whales and the white whale. Even that for the attack ships in the boats, they're stranded in for about 40 days and 40 nights. They do have about and since every people with crew and Mr. Chase was about to saying we're just having about the quit times and quitting shows and we wanted to be that way about showdowns. So we just have it about any questions about blowing up. So whoever it can be do. So that'll be it. So we'll just do continue to summer vacation for about, we'll just hang out there about Frankie, Bella, and I. We just have about vacation for about Benny and my aunt. So I basically use about some issues. They are literally hilarious. I just heard of them for about years ago. Just Lucky, and my answers was pay tributes to Corky's, and I usually do have about pay tributes to Lucky, and he was he was only about 9 years old. Um, I usually go for else and can do the most extreme. I usually do about that. So it's not about blow everything up. So since however anytime and anything and soon as much as possible. So it is about the coexist of the interesting. So if you do that, so however you can, that this one's could be about the whole entire opportunity and all times, and it figures that out that could be 1 to 4. So however you can. So this one might be the end of about 2015 and 365 days, and there could be years it's 2016. So we could go back to the work as long as I can about school to work for volunteers. So quotes of hobbies number 4. We are in same page. We are the same. We are doing this about the same page, just like Jesse did for about some high schools kids and junior high schools and elementary schools. It's just about quotes of hobbies number 4. So we could do that anytime. So we could do that for about part 1. I also did have about since I did have about Martin Luther King days. We're just gonna hang out here for about stay at home without the orders. So I usually we told about this about for winter break for about the snowman days after the Christmas is over. I usually I work for the entire opportunity for about for IEP meeting for this year for about 366 days for in 2016. So I just told about my new teachers for about my former teacher Mr. Jeffers and Mr. Haynes and Mr. Gleason and John and Mrs. Graves, then Miss Cowdell and Mrs. Starr and Miss Badlion and Miss Donna and Miss Joanne and Mrs. Rogers, and then even the Sierra, the Brendan, then Brendan number 2. So I hope to mention Donovan is still sort of about he usually about who former Puyallup Walmart associated for the couple years ago, and then I usually about my last IEP meeting for about just lined up the first time for about 2015. I usually about the booking for about paperwork to do to about my former DVR and eligibilities then Trillium, and I usually for the IEP meetings all these are concerns about my probability is since my dad just told about 2015 Disneylands and Universal Studios for about 1 day and 2 days. I basically was just told about this about really don't want to blow this off and then about to blow this off since I used it about that lady for the former Trillium Employment Services. She's Katie. So I mentioned for about last 7 years ago. I used it about Brookdale for about last 8 years ago. So So Bob, we usually for about we work this about entire opportunity for about I usually for about for the last 10 years ago we used about 2013 for 2016 is could be following from 2013 over the year. That was about 3 years. I just said that for about 7 years ago for a long time. Well, I just said that for about already for knowns for about I wasn't been about my birthday is about 21 years old. Then I told about this. We just had to make it told. Sometimes it's just to figure us out. I usually that said I believe in what I could. I imagine that if it could be willing to do. So if you guys have any questions as long as I can and that do whatever you can. So I just have it good to go. So never reject to people like this. So I usually Walmart just replace the Brookdale. So Andrew, my former job coach, was discovered to about for job entertainment to use it about for entertainment to use it about paperwork turned in for 100% for the disabilities. I use the disabilities to fill into the paperwork stuff for the coming in. My former paperwork for about Social Security. My former job coach Amanda and Andrew and Alex and Rick and Leanna on eventually Jenna and I don't know what she is. Brennan used to meet her for about she meets Jenna sometimes. So Brennan Miller was pretty good, and then he was my friend. He was a trending. He does not. Brennan and I we don't want to get a disrespect to each other, so I don't want to get a disrespect into each other's. Yeah, that doesn't want to make it know. So so make ways to about the job entertainment for about my volunteers for about Ferrucci Junior High Schools. That was been 5 years ago. I was basically I used about how from 2011 when I was about class of 2011 to graduated a day for the class of 2014. If I was to basically usually for about for job interview for about for the volunteers for about Monday through so Tuesdays to Friday. Um, I usually do have about discovered about 2 hours and 30 minutes ago. Mr. Haynes, I just came down to drive back to the advanced program, eating lunch, and just to keep my phones in my bag and put it right here to the safety bag. So just like I said to the Fuji staff says, no phones allowed here. So no phones allowed here for a Fuji Junior High School. So just like I said to myself. So I basically just assign into about for when you volunteers and whatever you get or about apply for about for the job application on goes to the Puyallup School District. So whatever you guys get, whoever you get. So sometimes they do have a continue to Fuji Junior High School since of February through May for June, whatever you can. So that's how it would be it. So that should be it. So we are in this about part 2 coming soon. So don't forget to about part 2 would be about quotes or hobbies for about number 5 to 8. I'll be back soon.